We can read them together. Is there any questions on them? There's your revisions. Seeing none, we need a motion to pass the minutes. Mike, seconded by John, all in favor? All right, action items, and it's the first one is presentation bill, service innovation.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I've been using this term a lot about the innovation agenda, just. It's become a term of its own, I think, at MLPS now, like, let's add that to our innovation agenda schedule. And really what it's become is it's got a mind of its own a little bit now, in that we're trying to space things out over the next 18 months to 2 years. To try and figure out how our resources match up with all of the things that we want to accomplish. So today I thought I'd just give you a quick overview of why we're innovating as hard as we are and what the plan is for the next 18 months. And then over the course of today, we're going to talk about, you'll remember last time we talked about mobile logistics. This time we're going to talk about 2 more things that are part of the innovation agenda. And the goal is that we're going to almost be able to predict when these are coming up on the agenda, because we're going to start scheduling them out. There's going to be a time period where you're going to see a report, another time period where you're going to see implementation, and then a follow-up on whether it's working. And then that leads into our budget conversation, all our service, what our metrics are for measuring all of this. So each report that comes to you for the innovation agenda is going to try to follow a similar format and have a similar cycle, but we just can't do it all at once. But it's important that we get as much done as we can, and we're really running hard on a number of these where we think we can get the biggest bang for the buck early. And why is innovation important? Is because we're trying to keep that line that's our budget variance well below our call volume chart going forward. And we know that there's three compounding factors. There's call volume growth that's led by population growth and an aging population. And so that's huge in this area. We're seeing a tsunami of seniors that are moving to the area and people that are needing additional services, and this chart sort of shows you that. And then we are seeing just incredible complexity in our calls. So that is our mental health calls, and just even being in an urban environment, and any drugs related calls. So the complexity level of our calls is increasing, and of course that's taking more time. And then offload delays is sort of the third compounding factor. And if we can't keep our costs below the call volume growth in terms of increases, we're going to get run over on all of these factors. So we're working really hard on this side of the table and making sure we innovate. And why are we innovating, Paul? We're innovating because you said it. No, the next slide. No. We're trying to give he's very readable, very it's all about this, and Mike and I had a conversation at lunch one day about this circle of employees in the middle and providing employee opportunities, and then us working around all of that. But for the innovation agenda, it's about making sure we give employee opportunities. We are trying to dramatically improve the patient experience. Changing our culture is another thing that every one of these things in the innovation agenda has to do. We have to recognize the healthcare system realities of what's going on and how we can keep people from having to go to the emergency room in the first place. That's also a priority of the innovation agenda. We're trying to do more for the community as a whole by service enhancements that we're going to talk about. When you see the list, you're going to say, oh, hopefully when you see the list, you go, oh, that's not traditional 911 service. No, because we're going to be doing more preventative type of work in the community to try and keep calls from having to go to 911 system. So service enhancements, cost reductions for our funders and for the service are really, really important, but also for how we can help lower costs for our healthcare partners by doing things. And then risk management is really important to me. This is an area that Paul and Adam and I have been spending a lot of time on, is understanding just how we can start doing some innovative things to reduce the overall risk across the organization. Then finally, sustainability. And what that means is, in all of these programs, how are we going to keep them going at the lowest cost with the lowest budgetary impact going forward? So it's quite a It's quite a goal, but we're working hard to try to do innovative things. So what you see on this list primarily are all things that are from the brains of the team. They're not things that we're copying from other places and going, oh, wouldn't it, like you saw mobile logistics. Nobody else in North America that I can find is doing it the way we're doing it or even doing it. And there's many of the things you're gonna see on the innovation agenda that are made in Middlesex. And as I told you, they may work, they may not work, but we're gonna try because we have to try. It would be very easy for everyone on this side of the room to go to work every day and do the exact same thing. But that would be just a waste of the brain power that we have over there, and we're gonna try to make these made in Middlesex solutions. So the innovation agenda is just listed here alphabetically. This isn't in any particular order other than alphabetical. But we've got a few of these things done. There's some low hanging fruit that have been done already that are off that list, but there's many things that are still to come. So Paul, we'll just keep going, and I just wanted you to have an idea of all the things that we're working on. I think probably at our next meeting, we'll talk more about the HART program. Today, as I mentioned, we have a few. Last meeting was the mobile logistics. Today, we're talking about the patient transfer unit. We've talked about rapid response units already. So a lot of these things you're gonna recognize as things that are special to us, that we're trying, and we're in the report writing phase for you about how they're working for some of these. We've talked a little bit about resiliency training already and some of these other items, but it's quite a list. And we're really working hard at our end to try and get it all done in the next 18 months. So if someone says, what are they working on over there? Show them that report, because that's all the stuff we're doing outside of the regular delivery of the service plan.
Questions? John?
Yeah, updated tiered response agreement with London Fire. Are you doing that with the fire system outside the city too?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, so we take a look at our tiered response agreements on an annual basis, so we do that.
And so I think in all of them, there are ways that we can achieve the goals of the innovation agenda. And in part of those discussions, and so that's why it's on this list, because there's things that we can be doing maybe a little differently with how those agreements are in place and what they look like. So instead of just a renewal conversation, which is what we would normally have, is just like, hey, let's sign this again for another how many period of time. Go ahead.
And more to it now too.
Yeah.
We also have the introduction of HART when that's rolling out as well, and that has an impact to those fire departments as well. So some of those conversations have started to have, here's what the team is, we're starting some of the some of that orientation piece or getting those together. Then we can then bring in some of the municipal fire departments to say, here's what they have capable, and this is how it would potentially fit in. Is there additional training or something specific to your particular fire department where you see a lot of this type of call? We would have some benefit for that, and then we could look at making sure that when the training actually happens for her, that we've taken into account what some of the needs might be from specific fire departments. So one fire department's needs may be different.
That's good. Sure.
Just to follow up with that, Adam. So you said you started the discussions with some of the county, or I guess the local fire departments in the county.
Yeah.
What's the feedback that you're getting?
Oh, I haven't heard anything. yet.
Okay.
Yeah. No, everybody that we've spoken to seems extremely positive about it.
We're also learning things about other programs we're
Okay,
doing too,
yeah.
like rapid response. When we talk to London, how is that impacting upon sort of what they do? And how do all of the things on this list impact upon what they do? So it's a good opportunity to have broader discussion.
Impact on the local fire departments,
Yeah, it's a
like
good-
outside of the city.
All of it.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
of it. Yeah, because like they need to know all the things we're working on too, to see how that fits in
Mhm.
to what they do, because it goes like this. So, yeah. That's what we're working on. It's just a great opportunity. It's a good entrance point for us to have conversations about a lot of different things.
And we'll keep updating that every time we come back. We'll add to it. We'll update the status of them.
Yeah, so yes, that's a good point. So the innovation agenda just keeps getting added to almost, way too often, I think, for some folks. But, and then what the next chart you're going to see that Paul's describing is when you're going to see the report, if you haven't seen it already, when you're gonna get the feedback, when you're gonna get, because we we kind of do everything in phased implementation around, that's what I prefer. So like mobile logistics is a good example, we're doing it in the Strathroy County area first. But what we're seeing so far is how fast can we get that throughout the whole area, but I'm trying to stay calm because the results are so good in the early days, but it's a small sample size, so practice somewhere where it makes sense with all of these things and then expand. That's what our goal is, so you'll get reports on all of that as we go through.
I was just gonna say, Bill, and through you, Chair, that, I see the, recruitment and retention, and like I could ask questions on every one of these
Yeah, sure.
items, but I'm not gonna do that, but, I see that a lot of these other, line items are going to feed into that recruitment and retention. Do you see that as being the metrics of how well we're doing? So if we're able to recruit and retain people, and so our loss of people goes down, our WSIB goes down, people are happier at work. We do go to market for new paramedics and you know, instead of having 5 applicants, we have 55 applicants. You see that as a metric of showing that all of the other programs are successful.
It's one of them, I mean, and then it's up to us to communicate, like this is part of why it's here. We're communicating to the world that we want to be the leader in this field in Ontario, Canada, and North America, that's our goal. And so, like we were just talking about the recruitment work last week with Sam, right? And so we're revamping all of that because it's the metric would be for me is that we're the employer of choice that they want to go to, and they aren't accepted by us, and that's why they go somewhere else. But we're gonna give them so many different opportunities that they're not gonna get anywhere else, that they're gonna wanna come to us. So yes, it's one metric, but it's up to us to communicate all of this stuff so that they know.
Yeah.
And we do have a huge need. We have a lot of part-time employees. I personally would like to see that be more full-time employees instead of part-time, because then we're investing in people that are gonna stick with us, and we're not just training people to go off and be great in Oxford and Huron and everywhere else. We want to invest in our people, give them opportunities so they can see the development through the life cycle of their job and stay there. So another metric would be, you talked about WSIB, you talked about I'm talking about part-time and how many full-times there are. There's lots of different metrics we're gonna try to measure this by with the board, but you hit on we have a lot of communication to do. But first we gotta get the programs in place, like it's amazing. I wish everybody could be in the parking lot conversations you have, or the water cooler conversations, like something silly, it might seem like the drone program is super important to recruitment. Because it just shows that we're trying to do things with technology and innovative, and like when you go talk to a paramedic which we do, that is a 25-year veteran, let's say. And you go talk to someone who's 21 years or 20 years old at Fanshawe. They care about completely different things about why they would choose us, and we're trying to be the employer of choice for all of them. And on this list, there's something for everybody, so we're not thinking about the average paramedic, we're thinking about the demographic spectrum of paramedics and the need demographic. I can tell you that's what all our conversations are, because it's totally different on this list depending on sort of what your interests are.
A lot of stuff in this list, a lot of great stuff on this list, a lot of things that are happening. My concern is, are we going too fast? Got a lot of balls in the air,
It should be your concern, yeah.
a lot of balls in the air. Is there a chance we could drop one? That's my only concern, like, this is great, don't get me wrong, all this stuff is just huge, what you're doing here. I'm just concerned that at the speed we're going, innovating all that, or bringing all this stuff on, that something might get dropped here, that's my only concern.
Yeah, and so what we draw sort of a circle, it's a good concern, because I think we draw a sort of a security fence around the 911 service. And say, that is our priority under the legislation, that is untouchable, we can't drop the ball anywhere there. And we're not gonna drop the ball anywhere there. But you're right, all these programs around it, we are innovating very quickly and we are trying things. But we're trying to try them, remember I said we're trying to try them in a way that is not like we're doing it across the service, we're doing it kind of like a pilot, it's seen. And I think it is okay to fail on some of the things, as long as it's not part of the 911 piece, so we know where we can fail and still be okay. Like, it's okay if we find out that we're not saving money and doing better with mobile logistics. That's okay, because it's just such a small sample size. And that's why I want to do, like, I get pushback from some folks that. I don't wanna give an example, but where they'll say, let's just do the whole program, and I go, no, wait, because if we get it wrong. We just fail a little bit over here, but we can't fail at all in 911 system, so I think we're cognizant of it, we're running really fast, there's no question. But I think that's the purpose of giving you all of these and saying, we're gonna start giving you timelines for how we're gonna spread them out. And I think that. On this side of the table, we really believe that some of these things getting them in place are gonna give us more time to make our job easier. We didn't even list a whole pile of the administrative stuff that we're doing, and if we get some of those done. Then we're gonna have more time, we're gonna have more resources, and we're gonna have more people to do other things later on the chart. But we're very mindful of what you said, John. And there may become a time when I'm gonna come back to you and say. We screwed this up and we don't have enough resources to do this, like, that's a very real possibility, and we monitor that fairly frequently. Yes.
Thanks, Brian, just, I think you've, I think you've explained everything, like, to John's concern, because that's what I was thinking as I'm looking through the list is, you try to do so much, and what is it at the expense of? So as long as, you've got these timelines that you are that are being held to, that you've got metrics that you can actually say yes, no, maybe, that's good, because I think, it is going to take, eyes on what we're doing to make sure that we're not overextending, we're not trying to be everything to everyone, and growing appropriately while building ourselves up.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do, I would describe it this way. We've grown so fast that we've just grown. And what we're trying now to do is put the innovation agenda over top of that growth, meaning compartmentalize things and specialize things, because there hasn't been a whole lot of that, it's just been running full tilt. And so I do think I think on this side of the table, we think this is actually gonna make things a lot easier and make it, but time will tell. Yeah, we're hopeful.
And we can talk about that a little bit about, making sure. Bringing something forward, giving it a chance,
Yeah.
without throwing another on top of it.
Because we definitely have less resources management wise than we have before, like, that's fairly obvious. And so that puts a lot of pressure on us to get it right and to do things a little differently.
Yeah.
So, one of the things and I'm listening to John and Kathy, and I think we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
So I see it as risk management.
Yeah.
Right, you have to manage that risk, so how best we could go about doing that. And just in my mind, having sat on stuff like this over my career, sometimes if you want that critical viewpoint, you get it from somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So your team is in there because you're all moving something in a certain direction, and you can get into that ball and into that room, and you're not looking outside, but it can be people that are directly affected by what you're doing. It could be, one of your paramedics with 20 years on it said, hang on here, right? There's a problem. I don't know that's right. And then you work through the problem and you're like, realize it's not a problem, or it's something you didn't think about, or it's also a really great way to engage with your union.
Yeah.
What do you see as the risk?
Yeah.
Because that's for sure, and I say that from coming from that world, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think as long as that cognizant thought during these bigger conversations is, did we talk about risk at the meeting? Or one person was assigned to do nothing but look at the risk. So today, Kathy, your job is to look at risk management.
Yeah.
Like, just everything we do, everything we talk about, I want you to talk about.
Devil's
risk
advocate,
management.
so to speak, yes. Yeah.
Right, and because somebody's tasked with it, and you kind of become
Yeah.
that for the meeting, it could be an interesting way to
Exercise, yeah.
make sure that risk is being managed.
What we're generally doing in terms of cadence is, idea, we cook it up. create the report internally, pass it around internally, do we like it? Do we think we can do it? Then there's sort of a very brief conversation with the union at our management union meetings where we sort of float the idea. Board report, then back to the union management with more details once we get there. So a lot of the things I'm thinking about our agenda today. Yeah, these two items haven't been back, to the table with the management union thing, but that's, I started that conversation this morning, that'll be next on the list. But you do get a lot of great feedback from those types of conversations.
I think,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, we do too.
Yeah.
We got a great group there that really helps.
Any questions? Bill, I don't see Waterloo Station anywhere in the agenda. Can you do just a brief update, what's going on with Waterloo?
Yeah, so we're phase one is all approved and ready to go. And so in terms of what it actually looks like, we've got various dates of whenever phase one will be actually complete. What's the latest date we got? June? End of April? Okay, so that's sort of our soft date of when we might be able to start moving things in there. And then we're in the process now of finalizing the renovation plan for phase two, which is the crew area. So speaking of union communication, so that's all the first floor and not much of the basement, but more structural and outside. That's all phase two, not the second floor. And so all of that work and what it looks like has gone through a process where every member's had a chance to comment on design and different elements of that. And we're just finalizing those costs. Do we have everyone now? I guess the windows are the last one, right? The last piece. And then we got the roof stuff. So I think we have everything now in terms of costing for the second phase. So now we'll be able to go. There's probably an element of what we have to explain to county council. Chris will have to do that probably next. And then, but we're at the stage where we know what it's gonna cost. We know we have the money to do it. And so getting that going and getting a completion date before pricing changes again on us.
Do we know exactly? Or is it ongoing, what community paramedicine is gonna look like at that station?
No, we definitely know what that's gonna look like. Do you wanna walk through that one?
I would like to hear, I don't think it's ever really been talked about, I mean, we're talking about community paramedicine, but.
You mean what the whole?
Yeah, what's,
Well,
what is it actually going to?
Well, first of all, we'll send you the drawings of what it actually looks like if you haven't seen that video. Yeah, okay, maybe
No,
we
we
have
haven't
that there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll send you the drawings of what it's actually gonna look like, but just in general, Adam, why don't you just talk about who's gonna be there for community paramedicine?
Yeah, so on the main floor, that section that was over on that far east side where it was the old training spaces, those training rooms. So that space has all been redone to be the community paramedicine offices. So there was, in that larger space, it was kind of blocked out by a couple of other sub rooms. So that's all been opened up, so there's a couple of offices along the backside, and then that open space is wide open for cubicle work, so or cubicle, hoteling type workspaces. So the community paramedics have one central space to work in and out of. So it puts them right in the middle of the city or in that space, so they can get to London and out to Middlesex County easier for their appointments, and they have one central place.
So we're not really anticipating that our community paramedicine people will be anywhere but there.
Correct.
So right now, you'll see them spread out. And they're gonna be primarily housed there. There may be one or two exceptions whenever we figure out the logistics of all this, but primarily our goal is everybody's there. New washrooms.
Yeah, so just once we moved past that, there was the old change facilities, because originally it was, when it was built as a fire hall, that was the sleeping quarters, the tower and that. So that's all been redone along with those locker spaces, so there's actually, it's a more open and usable space for the paramedics that are there, but as well as the community paramedics side of them. The kitchen it's on that back side as well. So there's enough space for that to become CP headquarters, so that they actually have one central spot to work in. For all of the department and everything.
We'll send you the layout and the selected color scheme and everything, but it's gonna be spectacular and they deserve it. I mean, what we're dealing with in many locations, as we know, Brian, is challenges, significant challenges, and so that's why Trossachs is on our list, that's why. Waterloo's on our list, and what am I missing? Well, I guess that's for now.
Those are the big ones, but with, even at headquarters with CP.
Yeah.
Because we're growing, or within us, they're sharing space with the education department and they're on top of each other. CP, as it expands, they have increased skill sets that they're doing, there's additional equipment that they need, for potential like blood analytics and things like that. So having a space dedicated for them allows the community paramedicine program to expand and blossom into what it should be. And so they have the space for the staff, they have the space for the equipment, they have the space to do their work.
And it's also a very big cultural statement we're making, that CP is a very important piece of what we're trying to do into the future in terms of preventative paramedicine. And also a big message to the province that, hey, this is so important that we created this location in downtown Middlesex-London to, for everybody. It's gonna be state of the art, I think, for what they need to be doing and in the perfect location for community paramedicine. So we're pretty excited about it. When we go to do the hard launch of that, Brian, that's when the board will get involved. We're inviting the ministers and everybody. We wanna like. Community paramedicine needs its day in the sun. And we don't wanna just be seen as a 911 system, and that hard launch is going to be the start of us really bragging about what community paramedicine has done and what it can be.
That's why I wanted to, I think, when we look at changes, community paramedicine is still. And Kathy's smiling, but it's still probably the biggest change, that and maybe the rapid response has the biggest impact, positive impact, so I appreciate that, which is. Okay, so any other questions on that?
Who's gonna head community paramedicine?
Yeah.
Is that headed by?
Dan, yeah.
Dan Griffiths.
Who's that?
Yeah.
Dan doesn't
Oh,
come
okay.
to our meetings, but we'll,
Oh, he
has
has
in the
been on a
past,
couple of them.
yeah. So we'll,
He's a commander?
Correct.
Okay, I'm just trying to get the terminology.
he's at the same level.
Yeah.
So we'll invite him to another meeting whenever we get closer to talk more about this, what this plan is for the facility, because he's got great ideas for how that's gonna improve the actual service.
No other questions, need a motion to accept that for Susan, Mike, all in favor? Here. Next one is ambulance procurement.
But this is a big piece of the innovation agenda too. We're looking at everything we do and figuring out how we can do it more efficiently and effectively to save costs. So Paul, if you just want to move that forward, Adam, you just want to show, talk us through.
Sure. When we're looking at our fleet management and specifically the replacement and purchasing of new ambulances or the procurement of them. Excuse me, there are several challenges. The availability of the ambulances, the timeline that it's going to take, just the actual manufacturing of the pieces that go into them. So we took it upon ourselves to start looking at new and different ways to do that and what's available for us. If we flip the slide, we can take a look at one of the options we have right now. We can either purchase a brand new ambulance or at a reduced cost, we can take a look at doing what's referred to as a remount. So when an ambulance has met a certain level of whether it's been in service for a certain period of time or it's mild to a certain period where it's becoming unreliable, we look at historically we've looked at replacing the ambulance. So we sell off that ambulance and we buy a brand new ambulance and that's shipped to us. The remount allows us to look at current existing ambulances where the physical box on the back of the ambulance is still in good repair. So there's no issues or problems with that, but it's the mechanical pieces of the chassis. So we can get a brand new chassis. So for example, Crestline, the manufacturer of the ambulances would take a brand new Ford or Chevy chassis and would take the donor ambulance box off of one of our current existing ambulances that's been miled out and place it onto the brand new chassis and then renew all of the inside and outside of that box. So it would get repainted to match the brand new. So the entire ambulance gets painted. The inside, new flooring, new cabinetry, like the plastic that goes along with it, new upholstery to the bench seats, if anything needed to be fixed or repaired, and make it look brand new. The benefits to that are many in that there's familiarity with that ambulance as well, so that it's already been proven there's no specific damage or problems that couldn't be repaired. And if we flip this cycle, another big one is the cost savings. The difference between a remount and the purchase of a brand new ambulance is between $70,000 and $90,000. That's a difference.
Yes.
Per unit. So, and if we move one more, we can take a look.
Hang on a second.
Oh, just start.
So can I just ask a question on that? And obviously, this falls within the specs that you're able to do that with what the province allows for what an ambulance to look like.
Absolutely, 100%. And the best, and the part of that is, this is one of the approved manufacturers from the province of Ontario that's doing this. So we're not sending it off to a third party to do that, so we would be using Crestline that would do the remount. Crestline builds the ambulances in the first place. They would take the box off of one of their old ambulances and put it back on one of their brand new chassis. So that we can make sure we meet all the specs, which is a really good question, because there have been instances where somebody would potentially use another one. And then it would end up with something that doesn't meet the issues. So this would all meet that.
Again, limited competition.
How,
For now, yes.
any idea the timeframe that it would take them if you take?
How much faster than Serena?
Yeah,
So right now, currently the average delivery time for the ordering of a new ambulance is anywhere between 14 and 16 months. To do the remount, we're looking between 8 and 10 months.
okay,
So we do have, so that's one of the other pluses. The cost savings alone is also a plus. When we're looking at purchasing multiple ambulances over the course of the year, by the time we remount 3.6 of our fleet, we've in essence paid for a brand new ambulance there as a whole. And a service our size, when we have such a large fleet, if we're looking to stay on top and making sure that we have active ambulances being able to roll, if we're looking to replace anywhere between 8 and 10 ambulances on average per year, that's a significant difference that we would potentially be making. And then if we move 1%, the other piece that we can take into context here too is the sustainability piece that goes with it. Just the actual manufacturing of that brand new box. To have to actually take it and discount or discard the physical ambulance itself, and then all of the processes to actually build out that box itself. We do have an impact on the environment as well by not having to build an ambulance. We're reusing the largest piece of that ambulance, and we can just remove the chassis piece, but we can actually take a very significant piece of the ambulance, which is still perfectly fine, functional, remove the pieces that are needed, and how to continue the operation for at least another life cycle of it, which could potentially be another 5, 6, 7 years.
And in the future, we're hoping that as mobile logistics spreads throughout the entire region for us, we'll be using the chassis part a lot less too, so because we won't be putting as many kilometers on that, like dramatically reducing the kilometers that we're putting on the ambulance. So we're hoping that between this and what we're doing with mobile logistics, our ambulance lifetime is going to expand pretty dramatically. We're hoping to be able to show you that, because that is, other than labor, that is our biggest cost.
It is, Kathy had mentioned something too about having that monopoly or that one provider that's in here. That's also one of the challenges that we have, is having only one provider, that being Crestline, right now that's approved in Ontario, it's difficult because they're the ones that we would be putting our brand new ambulances at the same time as every other paramedic service. And when we're looking at 16-month delivery times for ambulances, that's a long time to wait, which means our fleet is on the road for a lot longer, more breakdowns, more failures happening when they're to and from calls, but then having access to other vehicles, maintenance costs continue to go up. This is also one of those other methods that we're able to kind of mitigate some of the risk that comes with that as well.
and the savings might be even higher depending on what happens with.
And there's that side of that getting ahead of
With tariffs,
potential tariffs.
who knows, right? Susan,
Has this been done before, or is this a first time?
This will be a first time for MLPS. We're not the first to remount ambulances. There are a lot of other paramedic services that do that. There's different models that they would follow. I think the largest one that you would probably be able to would be Peel. Some paramedic services will remount a third to half of their normal orders as they move through. It depends on the wear and tear that goes with the actual donor ambulance. So when we take a look at the box, and you need to make sure, part of that process is Crestline would send its engineers to take a look at the box. This box, from what they can see and what they look at, it is a perfect candidate to be remounted. Some of them, it would require too many repairs. So then it's the service to make the decision on whether or not they want to invest that extra money into those additional repairs, or whether it's just now at the point where just buy a brand. So we're not the first to this, but this will be the first for us to be able to follow this particular model.
And our ambulances traditionally, per ambulance put on way more kilometers faster than urban services that are more urban services. Obviously, because the travel distances are so huge in the county, so. This is a really big thing to try and get the total lifespan of the ambulance chassis and box expanded.
And just a follow-up too, are there any downsides to this at all? Like, is there a lower, shorter warranty or less warranty or anything else that we should consider?
No, because we'd be using Crestline to do the remount, the warranty is also provided through Crestline, so we're getting the brand new manufacturer's warranty through the chassis. And Crestline is also providing warranty over all the retrofit of the box.
The only downside could be if the style changed at some point in time, like there's stylistic things, cause it's like. Buying last year's model versus
Yeah.
next year's model, but we have, the differences don't happen that often.
Not top of mind for the taxpayers.
No, exactly, yes. Yeah,
How many could you take out of service to do that? You know what I'm.
at a time.
Yeah, like. It's not like you could take 10 ambulances and take them there, it's like,
No, so that would be done through some planning and we've been working towards
That
that.
chart that shows us.
And this is the opportune moment for MLPS. With some of the backlog and potentially getting ambulances, we've had our fleet on the road for a little bit longer and we're able to pull off. Some of those ambulances that have been out there longer, so we have some now that we can actually use as donor ambulances, and we have more available for donor ambulances now that we can afford to take off the road and send for retrofitting. Or than we could in those years going forward, so then that would be part of the plan for. Every new purchase we've sent 4 or 5 for remount.
And we'll talk about it a little bit more when we talk about the business unit idea too, about ambulances and sort of what they're how to get longevity out of them.
John.
Just a comment, it's not what you're, there's just the blue lights on the ambulance, they really stand out. Like if you're going down the road and you've got one coming 5 kilometers behind you, you can see it coming.
It's amazing, even in like this winter conditions, where you get that haze in the morning and the foggy conditions you get, it cuts right through it for some
Yeah,
reason.
it's huge, they really stand out.
Yeah.
That's nothing to do with this, but I just wanted to mention that.
Any other questions?
I was just gonna move it.
Motion to approve the report, Susan, John, all in favor? Next is patient transfer.
This is something that we're pretty excited about bringing forward to you, and this is a big swing. I would say, Paul, don't you think this is a big swing?
I'm excited.
Yeah, yeah, everybody in this side of the table is really excited about bringing this forward for a lot of different reasons. And remember I showed you that chart about culture and about impact on employee opportunities and all of those things? I feel like this one covers all the things we're trying to do with the innovation agenda, but it is a big swing, to John's caution, for us, and that's why it's here, is because we want to talk about what it could mean. And it's a proactive initiative that we're trying to put in place to really be innovative and be ready for the next couple of quarters. So let's go through sort of what some of the challenges are, Adam, with the current system.
So what this gets born from having, so when we're talking about risk, there's several risks or certain things that are happening when we're looking at the 911 system, as Bill had already mentioned. That's the walled garden for MLPS is the 911. We want to make sure we don't do things that impact it, but we have external pressures that keep coming in that do impact it. That being dispatch, we don't have control over CAC, we don't have control over who's making the 911 calls, but in these instances, we also don't have control over hospital systems when they're booking transfers as well. When we're looking at specifically patient transfers or interfacility transports, we have 2 different priorities. So we have priority 1, which is a non-scheduled transfer. So somebody has gone and had an X-ray and then they're ready to go back to their sending facility, or somebody from a nursing home was taken for a treatment at the hospital and now they're ready to come home. That's the lowest priority, and that's the number 1. Then we have a scheduled transport, so the person is due to go for their dialysis treatment. Somebody's picking them at the nursing, or they're taking them from this hospital to the dialysis unit. That's a priority 2, because what they would want to do within the system is make sure they get to as close to their treatment time as possible. Then when we start looking at priority 3 and 4, that's where we're looking at mostly in the 911 calls, and that's typically what we report to the board. We typically you don't hear too much about the 1s and 2s. But with a priority 3, we end up with a blending between the 2s and 3s. A 3 is an emergent call, but it's not necessarily life threatening. A priority 2 or a transport or a transfer between one facility to another, if that patient is waiting for a definitive treatment such as dialysis, while their appointment might be at a certain time, the sending facility may not be able to wait any longer because they're waiting to do something else. If that person was getting prepped for surgery or there was something else going on, they might need them to get there. And if they're not able to get there in that time, the patient's acuity moves from a 2 to a 3. Once that moves into a 3, that call into the 911 system triggers the same as if somebody had picked up and called 911 for a priority 3, and it's going to get a paramedic response right away. With the transfers for the 1s and 2s, we can control those through what we have within the deployment plans of, if we have X number of ambulances available in the system, we'll service the codes 1s for the priority 1s and 2s. But we don't have the power to control when they're being put into the system as to how they would go out. Further to that, if we do have those ambulances in the system, if a priority 1 or a priority 2 were to be serviced, and we do have them, the units that are going are the units from the 911 system. So if, for example, if we use 4 counties to Strathroy Hospital, which we do see a lot of, that would be Glencoe picking up that patient, driving them to Strathroy, and then the Strathroy ambulance is going to take them back when they're done. And those are ambulances that are coming out of the 911 system. At the moment that they're doing that, and a priority 3 or 4 call were to come in, that unit is no longer in place because it's doing this particular call and it's been assigned to this much lower acuity call. We can go ahead to the slide. Oh, yes, sorry.
So I'm a little bit confused, Adam, just because the first bullet on that first slide, hospitals and healthcare facilities contract private service providers.
Yes.
So why are we providing that service?
Great question, sorry. So currently, 4 counties and LHSE both have private providers. So being Voyago, for example, or one of those, they can use, or they do use contracts with those specific facilities or those transport units to move the patient from A to B. They're based on their schedules. So under the Ambulance Act, all of these calls will come to the land ambulance service responsible for that region. So that's us. Those are our calls to do no matter what. If the individual facility chooses to do and contract out to a private service to get faster service, they can do so at their own expense.
Right.
But then they're also waiting on that private service's timelines. When that private service's timelines don't meet their expectations, they move the call into the 911 system. So for example, 4 counties wants to book a transfer from 4 counties to Strathroy for a CT scan, and Voyago can't come until the day after tomorrow. They're going to put it into the system as a priority 3 call for MLPS. So now all of a sudden Glencoe is getting pulled out on an emergency call to move the patient from A to B, and Strathroy is moving them back. That's where we lose control.
That's not the only scenario that's potentially negative. There's also funding cuts at hospitals.
So
you can talk about that at some point.
Yeah, I can talk about that right now. So LHSE, we haven't received anything like anything official, but I would be conscious, or I would be surprised if they renew their contract with Voyago, considering the pressures that they potentially have.
Well, we'll say it a different way. We'll be surprised if the cost cutting that's happening at hospitals across Ontario don't impact upon this type of service, especially since it's not necessarily, as Adam already pointed out, their legislative responsibility, it's ours. And so that's a potential risk to the system, not only into the 911 system being used for something it really shouldn't be used for, it technically should be, but shouldn't be, and then impacted upon how we deliver the service everywhere else, but also because of that financial pressure. So this report is about getting out in front of both of those types of things and being ready for those types of scenarios, right?
Exactly. Does that make sense? Okay. If we look historically, we are seeing, so further to that point, we are seeing those calls go up. If, for example, the hospital, let's just say it was 4 counties or LHSE, it doesn't really matter, but which one was going to move a patient from space to space? They're on a floor and they're going from Victoria Hospital to University Hospital. They're in Strathroy and being decanted to 4 counties. and they were not using their private contracted contract for that, the costs get deferred back down to the patient or their family. And if the patient or the family refuse or can't afford that, they move into the 911 system. And we're already seeing, so that's what we were saying, we're already seeing those increases over the past year in those transfers that are coming. And I would anticipate in this year that we see those numbers climb even more. So that's again, another impact into the 911 system. And we've looked at a couple of different ways that we potentially manage that. But to be able to give us, or to take the control back into MLPS to manage those specific transfers, what we are looking to do is to create a specific unit that will only do those transfers. So by having the unit being assigned to do the priority 1 and priority 2 calls, it leaves the other 911 ambulances available for the 911 calls. The staffing of the prior or this particular transport unit, we have the ability to also now provide support to our front line. We have individuals that are out of the workplace, whether that be for specific injuries or WSIB that are currently out of the workplace, and we can afford them an opportunity to be reintegrated back into the workplace in a manner that meets their physical limitations. We have the ability to help return people to the workplace that would potentially otherwise not be into the workplace. We can introduce them in a way that will actually provide benefit not only for them, but will provide benefit for the service while also protecting the system.
The sharp increase in about 2020 or 2019.
Yeah.
That probably relates to when the cost of the private service went up substantially, right?
Yes.
Their prices went all of a sudden jumped quite.
It relates to a few things though, right? Because there's hospital system restructuring that happened as well. Where, you know, there was a system in the world where there was general hospitals and now there's very specific hospitals. So the amount of interfacility transports rocketed up.
Well, that's exactly what I was gonna say, as healthcare is trying to evolve into what a hospital needs to be. You know, you might. They're trying to keep you in your home hospital as much as possible. So if you're at Strathroy, and whether you're on a palliative care, whether you're on a floor, whether you're on a surgical floor, and you still need something that only can be done at LHSC, they'll transport you as opposed to transferring you and putting you in a room in LHSC. And so, and that's all in, you know, that whole, how do we deliver healthcare differently and appropriately? But I guess that question is, if we're moving to this, how is that just funded then through our normal 911 accounting? So
Oh, wants to crack at that one out.
Yeah, so I look at it even more simply than everything else, like there's all these benefits to the system, but being a Schedule 2 and WSIB employer, if we're gonna staff this, we're already paying for those employees. We're gonna try to give them a meaningful return to work and have them work anyway.
no, I get it from the employee standpoint, but the delivering of the service, this is.
Who's gonna pay for it?
Who's gonna pay, how is that being paid for?
We're already paying for them to be on they're on WSID, we're already paying for them to be there, and then we're backfilling them in the 911 system.
Okay, so then you're gonna account for that and essentially you'll still get funded from the province for that, like.
It already is accounted for.
Oh,
It's just,
okay.
it's not performing a work, right? So it's already funded through the 911 system and the funders.
Right.
And the province, and theoretically, we're gonna take 50% of those persons that are on WSID.
A high percentage of
And
people
put
that-
them into this transfer unit, so they're getting to return to work. And it's providing like call volume and all that other stuff, doesn't protect the 911, but it's like a net zero.
Net zero. I guess, because then the other side of that is, if it is taking out who we as an employer are looking to do the job, let's look at the service, the patient transfer. In the end, that should be a hospital cost. Because you're transferring them either for a hospital service or you're like,
Well,
or it should be a private service, like.
we gotta go back to the basic premise that Adam started with. These are our legislative responsibility calls, so in a perfect world, you'd be right. It's just we don't live in that world. We live in a world where we're responsible for taking these calls. So we either, in a world where we move to where hospitals have less money to do it with private services, or they're over triage, or there's potentially over triaging. These costs get captured in 911 calls where they could be captured in a facility at a lower cost total for us, or they're gonna get captured in the higher cost 911 system and have all those negative effects. So in a perfect world, you're right, it would come from the hospital, but that's not where legislatively this money comes from. It's really our responsibility. Is that not what you would say?
How many units is this gonna take per shift? 1, 2, 3, like one won't do it. Like one unit won't be able to keep up to the volume, but
It wouldn't, I don't, the idea behind this or the principle behind this is not necessarily to replace Fuego or not to create that hospital transport system. And then like, I think maybe to your question as well, is we're not trying to create an interfacility transport business.
Oh, okay.
What we're trying to do is see that these calls are coming to us anyway.
Yeah,
So even if contracts remain, we're still seeing our call volumes of these priority 1 and 2 calls go up. So they're coming into the 911 system. So when they're actually sent to MLPS through CAC, now we've lost control and it's a 911 ambulance that's gonna go do the call. So we want to intercept it before it comes to the 911 system and be able to say, we're gonna send one of these. So if we started with one in the county and one in the city, so like, for example, one moving between Victoria and University Hospital and one between 4 counties and Strathroy, we would manage a lot of the ones that are spilling into the 911. And more to that, we can get ahead of some of the ones that are going to get triaged upwards and become a priority 3. And unfortunately, if we were having a really busy day with high offload delays and it comes in as a priority 3, we're stopping everything that we're doing to go and do that call anyways. And that's further, like, so we're into this quicksand.
But it's more than just, on that point there about the quicksand, that is really hard on paramedics themselves, culturally. If you talk to them about irritants within how the system works, this is one of them that we'll be removing because they get frustrated on those busy days when they get over triaged to something like this. And now, we should have probably started with, we're not trying to replace those other things, what we're trying to do is augment them and provide a new opportunity for people to return to work. And to remove calls from 911 system that are gonna get sent there on really busy
you're
days.
trying to stop the priority 1 and 2 going to a 3.
Correct.
Absolutely, if we do that alone, that'll
That's
be
a big
massive savings for us.
Even doing a handful of those a day is a massive win for us.
Oh, yeah, I can see
That
that.
interrupts breaks, it messes with people being going home on time.
Yeah.
Just even the spillover, like think of end of shift. We have an ambulance that's ready for the end of the shift and even we can put a system in place. So that is by far that is one of the biggest needles that a paramedic has to deal with. They would give up their breaks to go home on time, culturally speaking. So we want to keep as many units in our system to do 911 calls as possible. So if we had an ambulance that was waiting to go home at the end of the shift, they're in their last hour and the stat transfer comes in because there's nobody else to service it, then another ambulance in the 911 system who may not necessarily be towards the end of their shift is going to get assigned to that one. And then the next emerge call is going to go to the ambulance that was trying to come home. Whereas this other unit could have done that call that got prioritized as a 3 later on, or they could have sat and waited because they know that other unit is there for it. And this crew still gets to go home because that other protection unit was available.
And the only other thing we haven't mentioned is by providing this additional service, for the hospitals, for anybody that, sorry, I better say it this way, for anybody that might be inclined to over triage. With this service there's less likelihood that over triaging will happen. And so that's good for them too, because they have another resource available to them to not have to over triage. And that will help the system immensely. So these are all the different things we think that where this helps. And this is probably just a very short list. Like I said, nothing in innovation agenda hits all of the things, but this one's pretty close to hitting all the things that we're trying to accomplish.
So
We have some work to do, so go ahead and talk about that.
So the next piece is taking a look. We've done a scan of the people that are potentially available that are outside of the system that we could look to reintegrate back into the work system. And we have enough to be able to do that. The ideal piece as well, because this is outside of, and John's question as well, how many would we have? If there was a time where we needed more, we can actually put more on, because again, it's a net zero. If there was a day or a time period where there were less, we could also put less on, because we're not creating this as a unit specifically with that it's not part of our mandated complement deployment on any given day. So we also want to work with the Ministry of Health about specific designation for this unit. So that will also help transition potentially more people back into the system. So if we have individuals or employees that they want to return to the workplace, but they can't. So if somebody was off with critical mental stress injuries where they can't return back into the workplace and be active with 911 calls, but they want to return, we have the opportunity for them to work with their case managers for here's a different gradual return to work. They can be in the environment, but they're not around the lights and sirens of the emergency calls. If we have people that have physical limitations from lifting injuries or a rotator cuff from whatever the case may be, they're not lifting in the same manner. So some of these units will potentially meet some of the restrictions that they have, and we can help regions go back in. We'd like to actually push it even further with the ministry. We can do that now, but we would like to push it a little bit further with the ministry to actually designate the unit as a specialty transport unit for
So our
respiratory.
next steps in terms of implementation are, we have to get through these types of things, but we're through a lot of them. I think a lot of the conversations we have to have that are left are really Ministry of Health conversations.
That's about the one I thought.
That's really it, but as soon as possible is when we'd like to implement this. So what my suggestion would be is let us get through the conversations with the Ministry of Health about what this looks like. We'll come back to you about the conclusion of those conversations with an implementation sort of plan about what days we're gonna do this and what our workforce is gonna look like after and cost analysis at that time. But we could be doing that in 45 days, like, with any luck, we could be doing, because this is a really important one for us to get it.
This is another huge benefit. You're taking those code 3 calls that would escalate the code 3 out of the system. You're giving employees another avenue to get back to work and to do even a paramedic that's maybe a little older that's getting more difficult to do the normal jobs to do this. It's another avenue for retention of the older paramedics. And to take those code 3 calls out of the system, this frees up a lot more energy, so I think it's a great program.
Yeah, our hope is that, when we're sitting here next year, we're gonna have like. Not just 911 opportunities, we're gonna have 12 different opportunities around the 911. So like 12 is just a number I picked of the year, but like all these different options. For different people with different skill sets and different interests, and that'd be kind of exciting.
So I think there's a lot of good things to it. I do have one question, I think, for me, and that would be, the hospital now uses a private service.
Yeah.
Do you see that all the calls will automatically, or more calls will automatically come to use because it doesn't cost like the private service does?
No, I think it's right now, the hospitals, when they do use that private service, we're still getting those calls. So the private service is already maxed out in the number that they do. So when they come to us, they've been moved from the priority 2 to the priority 3, or we're already at that stage. Some of the patients that they want to move don't necessarily require somebody of a higher level of care that can potentially see them, so that that private transport company may not even be qualified to move them from space to space. So we are getting those ones, but we can control the number, the volume. We can put the parameters in place that we would have that. I do imagine that even if there are more, that we can control the number based on the number of people that we would put into the system. So
Yeah, we only have so many resources to put in there too, and the amount of resources we have to put in will
I was
matter.
wondering if we become MLPS first.
Well,
it might, but sometimes right now, just anecdotally, what we do see, it does happen a lot of times within the hospitals, or like specifically on the floors, they'll try to book will receive calls for a transport to move an interfacility transport, but they booked it with the 911 system and they booked it with the private transport company, and then wait and see who shows up first.
Oh.
So that's also another frustration into the system. So when we get the feedback from our paramedics that they showed up and they said, yeah, we called Voyago, but to see who you guys got here
You
first.
can imagine.
Well, because they put it in there as a priority system, Voyago over the private transport companies are not legislatively required to respond within a certain amount of time, but when they put it in as this elevated transport between facilities, we go, so they stop it, and that's one of those frustrations that Bill's talking about, so our staff that were about to have their break now have to stop everything that they're doing to go and do this at that particular moment.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm certainly not opposed to it, I think it's a great idea to go forward. Any other questions on this? No, I need a motion to accept the report, Kathy and Mike, this time, all in favor? Carries. It's correspondence information items, I don't.
I just have one quick one, I'll send it around if I haven't done it already, the Oneida. Correspondence you'll get, I guess, that's, it can be here or in another section, but you'll get. It's great news story, from our perspective, that Oneida is ready to, develop their own system without our support. It's not a bad news story, it's a great news story after how many years we've been doing this? 4, yeah, I was gonna say 3.5, so that's good. They sent us a very thankful letter and they're ready to spread their wings and do the thing, so I'll send you that letter and we'll give you updates as we go through the transition, or that tapering off of that sort of, but that's, I think, exciting stuff.
I need a motion going to close. That's in my, all in favor? Carries. We are back in open session. And rise and report is that the board ratified the minutes of settlement between MLPS and OPSU Local 147 Logistics Bargaining Unit, and authorize the Director of Paramedic Services and the Chair to sign a new collective agreement effective January 1st, 2025, to expire December 31st, 2028. Moved by Mike, seconded by Cass. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Our next inquiries.
I just have one in this comment in going forward. And I understand why we had to call the meeting with limited notice because of obviously our closed session discussion. But are we going to be working towards maybe like more of a schedule of meetings?
Yeah.
So like, and I do appreciate they come up, but just, I mean, to think about the library board, they have a scheduled meetings for the year ahead. Can we work towards that?
I would like that as well.
Yeah, we sent around a doodle poll. There's a couple other things that are in a state of flux that sort of held off on us setting what that exact timetable is, but we sent around a doodle poll where people pick some dates into the future. I can do that again, Brian and I can talk about it. Our goal is to have 5 scheduled meetings throughout the whole year, with at the call of the chair the rest of the time when they come up, so that's our goal.
Okay.
So
Thank
we'll get back at that maybe this week, Brian, when we know a few other things that come into play.
And I know we talked about all the meetings would be at MLPS, and I think we said that, you were both here, but sometimes there's other meetings going on at the same time. And it just makes sense, it's tough to get across the city right now.
Not today.
I couldn't hear that.
Not today.
No.
Not today,
We want to get many of them at MLPS as possible, so we can introduce you to as many people as possible, and because getting to know the board is an important part of the cultural stuff we're trying to get done.
yeah, it's a great point, Nate. We'll work on that, okay, bylaw.
Yep, motion, bylaw to confirm the proceedings.
Mike, John? All in favor? Third final, Kathy and Susan, all in favor? Carried. I think that's it, isn't it? Next meeting, we'll have to.
Don't start that
again. No, we'll discuss it and move to